Hey guys, George at SoundTraxx here, and this week we're going to dive into part 2 of our Rehab My Loco series. Now, last time we actually took apart this SD40, and you can see I've got the shell here in front of me and the bare chassis right here. So this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to add a few details before we put the thing back together, kind of show you how hard it is, or not, to add a little bit of detail to your models. Now, this way you could take some of the older models that you may have, maybe some of the lower quality ones, and add some detail and really make it pop on your layout. Because, you know, with a lot of today's models, as modelers, we keep asking more and more detail, more detail, more detail. And then what happens is we get our new models and they don't quite have the same. And so they kind of get put off to the side. So we're going to show you today how to add just some basic details to help add that extra element to let the locomotive pop on your layout. So before I move the camera, just want to go over a couple of things. I'm going to have another camera here trying to be kind of above me. Hopefully you guys can see. I'm going to try to give you guys a better bird's eye view, and we'll combine these two video cameras together, and I will reposition this to again look down on the work and see what we can do. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I've got the two cameras positioned in a different way so that way hopefully you guys can see the work of what I'm doing in front of me here. So what I've got, just some basic details that we're going to be talking about. The first one, you know, what's on top of the model is usually what we see as modelers. And so here I've got a set of Detail Associates brass lift rings. These things are extremely difficult to find. So they make other ones. You can get etched metal ones. There's a couple of companies. These are some extra ones you can get from the Athearn models. But there's other companies that make etched metal lift rings. I personally like the look of the round with the cast brass ones myself. We've got this traction motor cable set from Details West. And that's really going to help add a little bit of interest to the underframe when we're working under here. We got some class light and some headlight lenses, which we'll be using a little later. Drop steps. These are from Detail Associates here. And then we've got some A-line wipers that we'll be able to add. Also, we're going to be using some brass wire. Brass wire formed for various purposes. And then with the Athearn models, you do get a small little detail kit for the fuel tank. And this is where you'll see a lot of these holes on the front and the rear. And that's basically what it's for. It's just we're adding some... Uh-oh. Where'd my screw go? There's my screw. I lost my screw up inside of here. We're also going to show you a neat little trick about the fuel tank here. Here I have a Cannon & Company cab interior. So this way we can add a little bit of detail to the inside of the locomotive. And we're going to add a couple of other parts along the way. These are just the basic ones that I start with. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to get a marker. And when we're working on this model, we're going to be adding truck lights or ground lights. And so typically those are positioned over the cab. So all I'm going to do right here is just kind of mark where the position is. Apparently I've already done this. In this case, I used the metal, the edge of a knife. But you can see the X patterns here that are cut into there. So that's where we're going to drill our holes for the wires to come down and through. And we're going to do that here in just a moment. But first I want to show you, before we get into that, we're going to take this cab off. And it actually is pretty simple. It comes apart. Now usually what you'll do is get an X-Acto knife and just kind of fit behind the handrail here, but don't push because the blade is going to cut. But what you're going to do is just twist a little bit. And that twisting pulls the handrail out of the socket. We're going to do the same thing here on the front of the cab. And then here on the other side. And this is how you can do this all the way around. And we're probably going to end up removing the, there we go. We're probably going to end up removing the end ones, or at least on the front, so we can access, because we're going to drill some holes for these class lights up front. But now with the handrails done, this cab just snaps into place. So you can kind of see, hopefully you can see it, in the inside here, there's a couple of tabs on the back and then one tab on the front. So this, you have the two tabs here on the back of the cab. This is the top that holds it to the top of the long hood. And then we have one little tab here that holds it to the top of the short hood. And so we're just going to kind of reach in here and just kind of pry it loose and push up at the same time. And sometimes you can even grip the back of the cab a little bit, because we're just trying to knock that. There we go. You can see it's coming. And that's all it takes, just a little bit of effort. And then you can come in here, like say with a small flathead screwdriver, just kind of pry it a little bit, and just kind of force the hand. There we go. So now that the cab is loose, we just pull it up. And the only challenge, sometimes they do tack glue these in place, so you want to kind of make sure. There we go. So there was a little tack glue there. And now cab just lifts out. Just that easy. All right, what's it stuck on? It's got to be stuck on something. I don't see anything in here. Sometimes it just needs to be pulled. There we go. Cab came out. So you can see the cab just popped right out. And in this case, I've removed the lights, the 1.5 light bulbs, and that's where we're going to replace it with these lenses here. So don't worry about that. Now, a lot of times these windows, and this particular model, these windows are already just a solid piece that are press fit in there. That's all you need. But sometimes you get the positionable ones. Up to you. Doesn't really make that big of a difference with these here. But let's start with the windshield wipers, since we have the cab out in our hand. Now, if you look above each of the window, there's a small little box, and that's usually where the wiper arm would be. And you can even see it over the back ones as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a small drill, and I have one here pulled out. And this one, if I remember correctly, it's already out. So unfortunately, I think this is like a 75 or a 76 drill. You can get these drill bit kits. I've got a few of them, as you can see. And just grab a small one. They don't take much. And with that, just kind of position your drill where it's going to go into that hole, or into the box a little bit, and just start drilling. And there we go. And now there's the first one. Now there's 2 under here, and then we're going to do the 4 on top of the long windows first. Now those are going to be the long wiper blades, and then the ones under the center cab windows are going to be the short wiper blades. Now I would want to point out that when we're doing this, you do want to make sure to check your pictures. Your photographs of your model are going to be invaluable to understanding what parts go where, and how the model, or how the detail parts go, because that's ultimately going to be your guide. Now, I know some of you guys are going to ask where I got this pin vise. I honestly don't remember. A lot of times I'll go to RPM shows or Trainz shows, and I'll see a tool vendor there, and I've got 2 of these small ones like this, and then I have a couple of these bigger ones like this that we're going to use here in a little bit. And they're just different types. And then, of course, there's the other style like this. And then there's the bigger ones if you need bigger drill holes and bigger holes and things like that. So these two, I believe, are designed to put into either a mechanical screwdriver or a drill bit, a small drill or something like that. These are intended to be done by hand. There's nothing says you can't use these by hand either. So I'm just going to set these down. Now I've got my holes drilled for the 4 long windows, but this drill bit is actually tight in here and it's too short for me to reach that. Come on. There we go. It's too small to reach or too short to reach the ones under the number board. So we're just going to extend this out a little bit and then we're going to tighten it up. And I'm using just a pair of wire strippers to grip the end here so I can get a better grip to tighten that up. Because if the drill bit breaks loose or breaks in it, it's going to make it a lot harder to drill out these. So when you're doing these, you want to be very careful and take your time. But we're just going to, and remember, you don't need to apply a ton of pressure. With fresh drill bits, they will drill in these holes pretty good. And the plastic is fairly soft. Doesn't really take much to drill into it. There we go. There's one. And then here's the, oops, started to miss. There we go. And like I said, you're not applying a whole lot of pressure, just a little bit. And there we go. So all the holes for the windshield wipers are drilled. Now, the wiper kits, these wipers here are the ones put out by A-Line. They're a plastic. I know there's a couple of companies out there like KB Models or there's another one I'm trying to think of. But they have metal wiper blades. Whichever you like to use is the best one. I like these because one of the things is you can see a little bit of definition here with the double arm on the long wiper blades. And the short ones just have the single. So we're just going to take a fresh, sharp X-Acto knife. And, oops. And I just ruined that one. So you don't be afraid. Stuff happens. But that's why you buy multiples of these things, right? So, and that one just flew off of onto the floor. I'll go find it in a minute. There we go. Now we're going to do the same thing for these short ones. Now, when they're on the front, they're usually angled to the same side. So, I don't know if it matters. Again, check your pictures. I don't worry about it too much. I'm just going to go ahead and take two that are matched together. And then I'll make sure those are on the same side. Now this is where your tweezers are going to come in handy because that's what's going to handle your wiper blades and your parts. Now this stuff here, I've used 10X glue for a million years. This stuff's hard to come by, so this last little bit is all I've got left. So I found this other stuff. This is called styrene tack it 2. It's supposed to be the same thing. Works really well. I like it. And then I have a liquid plastic cement glue applicator, and I have a bunch of these, but these are called a touch and flow from the makers of the FlexiFile. And you can get these, they're about anywhere from, I've seen it 10 to 15, 12, 15 bucks, but it's just a glass tube with a needle tip on it that's hollow that allows you to apply just a little bit. But yeah, I've got a few of them here. Because inevitably I'll lose it, misplace it, drop it, break it, whatever the case is. But the glue is applied into the tube, typically by capillary action. Sometimes it needs a little coaxing, but be very, very careful not to get any of that in your mouth. It is poisonous, so don't always do what I'm doing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our first small wiper blade, and then you can, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's kind of angled in such a way that it's going to be on this side. So we're going to go ahead and grip the arm. We're going to place it in the hole that we drilled. Oops. This is why you work on your table, is because then that way if something drops, falls on your table. But what we're going to do is we're just going to simply put that end of it into the hole. Uh-oh. I think I've drilled too small a hole. Let's try the big one just to make sure. Because it looks like, yeah, it's not liking going into its hole here. But that's okay. You can start out small and drill it bigger if you need to. Yeah, it's not going very easily. So let's get a bigger drill. Yep. But this is all it takes. So while I do this, so we're going to come over here. We're going to switch this out. So I'm going to put this drill bit back into, I think it was a 70. That looks about right. All right, now I'm going to grab a 73 drill. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to put it into the pin vise. And again, you want to make sure you have enough visible or eligible or accessible for it to go into the holes. I'm telling you, watching people drill holes makes for good television, eh? Okay, now with our front holes drilled out a little bit, let's go ahead and grab our wiper blades and let's put them in now so you can see the difference. Just a small detail makes. So here's the cab before we've got our holes drilled. Now I'm just going to take this, I'm going to put it into the hole here. Oh yeah, that's plenty. Probably could have gone a size down. Now our touch and flow applicator, as you increase the angle, more glue is going to come out the end. And so that's one of the things you have to be careful of. But it allows you to put the exact amount of glue that you want to come out of the end here. So when you put the glue in, just enough. Okay. Let's get the other one here. And you want to try to put them at about the right angle. About the same angle, I mean. And we applied a little bit of glue, but the good news is it doesn't dry instantly, so we can move it over a little bit. And there you go. So now we're going to take our last wiper blade that I have here. I'll have to get more. Put that in here. And you can see that kind of goes off to the side. We'll put a little touch of glue on there. There we go. All right, so even just those three, you can see it already makes the front of the cab look more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the other wiper blade that fell on the floor, and I'm going to go get two more out of a new fresh set because I ruined one, and I'll go ahead and put them on the other side here, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so we've got our wipers added. You can kind of see how the front of this model looks now. You can see it's a lot more interesting. You can paint these if you want. A lot of times they're left as bare metal, so you don't necessarily need to paint them, but you can if you want. Now the last thing we're going to do with this cab before we put it aside for the time being is we're going to pull these number boards off. One of the little known secrets about the, whoops, that one's trying to sneak off. Okay, one of the little known secrets about the Athearn EMD cabs right here is that these number boards actually come off and there's a hollow cavity behind them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take again the tip of an X-Acto knife and just kind of reach in behind, and we're going to grip it and just pull it out. So it's just tacked in place with something like canopy glue. So we're just going to pull that out, and we're going to pull it off. And then now you can see there's actually this cavity back here. And that's what we're going to use to light it up, because it's nice and easy. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Just grip a corner, reach in behind it. It usually comes off fairly easy. And then when we're putting it back, again, we'll make sure we put the canopy type glue around there just to make sure that it holds in. But yeah, there's a giant cavity that's open right there. So what we're going to do here, now the one thing there is to know though, is that this cavity is open and this cavity is open, and your headlights are right here, but that's open behind there. And so what can happen is when we're mounting our LEDs, what can happen is that the light for the headlights will bleed into the side here. And I think that was part of their initial intention of leaving that open like that. But one things I will say Athearn didn't do very well was when they wrote their number boards out, they printed the white and then they painted the whole back of it solid black. And so what ends up happening is now there's no light leakage coming through. So you've got a beautiful front of the number board right there, and it looks great, but it's solid black. So there's no light going to be coming through. So we're going to fix that, but not right this minute. We'll use that in our next section. So we're going to go ahead and drill a couple of holes into this, and then what you can do to block this off is cut some styrene and put it in there. Or you can get something like a putty or Play-Doh or something and just kind of block that off a little bit. But you want to make sure that the holes for the headlights are still open. So with that, that's all we're going to do for the cab for right now. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is when it comes to drilling out these holes for the lift rings. Now, as I mentioned, we have our lift rings, and there's actually little dimples all the way around the top of this model where you can see where all the lift rings would go. And they put the grab irons and all the grips, handholds or whatever down the long hood here, but none of the lift rings are there. Now the lift rings are used to lift the hoods up and out of the way, but they're not on this model, so we're going to fix that. So again, now this time again, I'm going to use a smaller drill bit because I know this isn't as big as this. These are more like let's see, this was a 73, so I'm going to use a 76. I believe that is the correct size, and you can always compare. You can see that's a fairly small shaft right there, so that 76 drill will work perfectly. And then we're just going to put it again in our pin vise. Now this one you can leave the drill bit length short because I'm not trying to go around a whole lot of detail parts. And we're just going to kind of carefully find the hole, and there is a little dimple in there, so it's just a matter of finding that center and then just drill it out, just like we did for the windshield wipers. Now, I'm not going to drill all these out. You can kind of get an idea of how it takes to drill a hole. But again, when you're doing a drill, make sure it's a fresh drill, a sharp drill, and just go slow. You don't need to, it's not a race. And once you get through, now you got a perfectly clean little hole right there. That, no, I'm not quite through that one yet. So we'll come through here just like this. And apparently my 75 drill, or my 76 drill, is not as sharp as I thought. There it goes. It finally got through. It's not quite as sharp as I thought, but now you can see that it's there. Now I'm not going to sit here and drill all these out on camera. You guys get the feel for that. Okay, so after I've got all the holes drilled all the way around for the lift rings, we cut them off of the boss here. We cut them off, and I've just got a small little pile. So in order to apply these properly, what we do is we take a scrap business card. And what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of glue on it. In this case, we're going to use CA. And I'm just going to take my tweezers here, and I'm going to grip the lift ring into the tweezers here. Whoops. Let's get it secured. There we go. So I've got my tweezers holding the lift ring. So I'm just going to dip it a little bit in the glue here, just to get a little CA on it. And then we're just going to simply put it in the hole. So just line it up. And there we go. So now you can see I've got this lift ring installed right there. And you see I've already done one. Now I've got the second one. So I'll show you again just how quick and easy this is to add. So we've got our lift ring. We've got it with our tweezers here. Just going to gently put it in the glue. I'm going to go ahead and put this next one here on the next to the exhaust stack. And it just slides into place just like that. And so you want to make sure that they're all lined up properly. They're all lining up forward and backward. So, and the other thing, put a little bit of, I lick my hand and pick it up, and that way I can grip it. But the other thing is there's actually 2 lift rings on the back of the long hood too. And so just to show you that, put a little bit of glue on the back here. And now this is actually going to go right there. Just like that. There we go. So now you've got the lift ring here on the back of the long hood, and there's one on both sides. So we can simply, oops, grab another one. And again, we're going to grip it in our tweezers. We're going to gently put it in the glue. And then just put it in place. And again, these you want to kind of go, vertically up and down so that the loop is on the side to side, because again, the point of the lift ring is so they can put chains and lift the hood up off of the mechanism. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the rest of these and be right back. Okay, so now you can see I've got all the lift rings in place. So you can see there's actually 14 lift rings all along here, and it adds that extra little bit. So I'm going to show you 2 other things. And one of them is when we're prepping these out, we're going to drill these class light holes out because we want to add the class lights later. So usually what I'll do is you get a knife and you just want to create a flat surface. So just kind of shave very, very carefully on the edge. And again, this is where you get a sharp knife and just take your time. Because what will happen is when you're drilling by hand, your drill bit's going to roll all over the place. But when we have this there, so now you can kind of see how that hole is, the black part is where we just cut, and it's kind of centered. And we're going to do the same thing here on this side. I'm just going to shave it just ever so carefully. There we go. And now I've got both of those there. Now, again, we can use a smaller drill to expand it. So we're going to use a smaller drill, and I'm going to use this one here. I don't remember what size this is. This is like a 65 or something. And so you're going to want to try to center that as close as you can. And then just start slowly drilling it out. Check your work also, so you can come back and see, and you can always try to move your drill bit around to make sure you're centered at different angles. It kind of forces the whole drill a little bit so you can find the center. There we go. So now I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to drill straight in. And again, you want to remember the angle of the hood that we're going to be drilling it kind of at a 90-degree angle to get through there. And there, I'm through. So now when we look at that, you can kind of see that that's a nice clean hole on this side right in the middle. Now remember, this isn't the final size of our class light, but we do want to make sure it's centered. So we're going to do the same thing on the other one. And this one actually looks like I almost nailed it. I'm off by a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit more. There we go. All right. Again, we're going to drill this out because we're going to be adding lights to it. And there we go. So there's the holes for our class lights. They're already drilled out. They're centered. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the packaging that comes with our class lights lenses here. And it's going to tell us what size drill bit we need. And I have that pulled up in another one of these already. So now, because the hole is centered, now I can come in with my bigger drill and just finish it off and make sure the hole is the right size for the lenses. And we're not going to put the lenses in just yet. So now you can kind of see the difference. Now this is the correct size hole, and that's the pilot hole. And that's all it takes. So now we're going to go ahead and drill this out on this side. Just like that. So now we've got our holes for the front class lights, and you're going to do the same thing again for the back. Now, some of the other things we want to do, we want to pay attention to some of these underframe details. Now, these tanks actually have piping coming out of them, and so we want to add that. And so these are usually just glued in place, and they can come up. It's kind of harder to get a drill bit in on the side, but sometimes you can. But you want to come in at the ends of each of these tanks. Yep. Let's make a flat surface again, just like we did for the, because there's a flash line here for the where the parts came together. And these tanks are just plastic, so you can drill in them pretty easy. Now I know that Details West makes some air tank reservoirs kits that are a little bit more detailed. I have replaced them in some models. On this particular one, I'm not going to, but then you can just come in and do the same thing. You can kind of drill, start a hole in the center of it. And I'm kind of drilling at an angle right now, so I'm not even where I want to drill. So again, this is where coming in here and taking these off is probably going to be a better idea. So let's see if I can get these off, because they're going to be glued in place. There we go. So it just pops off. And then you can see the mounting pins here that mount it under the frame right here. And it'll show you which ones, because you can see where the glue was, so that way you position it correctly when you put it back. So yeah, now we're going to go ahead and just drill the ends out. And we're just going to get some brass piping or brass wire from your favorite supplier, whether it be K&S, Detail Associates, or Precision Scale. A lot of those companies have brass wire. And you're just going to drill it out. And so I don't know how well it'll show up on camera, but we just put a hole in the end there. And we're going to do the same thing on both sides, because these are the air tanks. So when the compressor finishes cycling, this is what it's charging, is the air is stored in these tanks, and that's what's used for the air brake system and so forth, and other appliances around the model or around the locomotive. And usually these are hollow, so I'm not drilling in all the way, but you kind of get the idea. And so now I've got the holes, one on each end, and now I can put that back in place. So now that we've got these back in place, I went ahead and put some wire in here to kind of create the piping that you would see coming out of the air tank. So these two go back a little bit. This one goes up to the air filter, and then this one kind of loops around underneath of it. So just a little bit of detail that we're adding on to this, really to try to help enhance the underbody. A couple of other things. Now, when we talk about the side frames here, now this is another thing that is a small detail that can add. Now these, on the cheaper versions like this RTR, these don't have the pipes that go out from the backs of the cylinders because the air has to be piped to these cylinders. But it's a small little detail. So what I had done prior was I had just bent a few of these previously to match the backs of these. So then there's a little pocket right there on the back that hopefully it shows up on the camera that you can just simply put your drill bit in and start drilling. And again, these cylinders are also hollow. So once you get into it, it will just pop into place. There we go. Now I'm inside of that one. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And so go ahead and drill into this one. Now there's other things you can also do, for example, and we may do it on this one, are the sanding lines. And the sanding lines, let's see, I'm almost, come on, almost there. There it goes. So now I've got the pipes for there. But the sanding lines, you actually have the brackets here that you could do. So you could actually come in here and there's a small little notch on the back that you could take some really fine like 05 or 010 wire and just kind of bend and just glue it to the back of the side frame here. Just be careful when you're doing that to make sure that it won't interfere with the wheels. But that's a neat little addition as well. So when I've got my metal here, I've already got it pre-bent. I think I saw some companies actually make this piece. I could be wrong. Doesn't happen very often. But we're just going to, and I did bend it entirely to be a little bit longer because you do want to make sure it sits in there. Oops. There we go. So now we'll come back over here to this one and we'll seat it. There we go. So now once you put that on, just showing that pipe going along there. Now I will tell you that there's more bends than just these on the ends, and then that actually connects. But when you're looking at it from the side, you won't be able to tell really that much. So usually I'll just do the basics here, and then just kind of tack glue it in place. And then of course you have a bottle of paint that matches your model. In this particular case, I think this is it. Yeah, so in this case I've got the True Color MP Jenks Blue, which is the right one, and we can just go in and brush apply and touch it up there a little bit. So we've done a lot just to kind of give you an idea. Now these traction cables will actually fit underneath here, and then you just glue them into the side, but then you'll want to twist them kind of where they go underneath here a little bit. So when you glue them into the side, remember you're going to have your air tank kind of over here, so you don't need to run them down the entire length. And then these are just made of white metal, so they're malleable and they just kind of go into place. Now I'm going to get my cutters here. We're going to cut off the boss. So I just cut that piece of metal off. And then now what we're going to do is you can kind of figure out where this sits, and you want to run them along the bottom. I think these are actually the ones I'm going to put on the front. So where these go would go along here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of bend these end ones kind of up to where they would fit and go underneath and around and under the frame here. Just kind of like that. And then what it will do is we'll glue it in place and then cut it flush. So we're just going to get some CA glue and just kind of glue that right in there. And then we'll twist these down once the CA dries. And then, of course, we can come in and touch that up with, again, with our blue. So, okay, so I've got the traction cables in place. You can kind of see that I've got the 2x2s along the engineer side, and then the 4 flat on the fireman side. But you'll notice that I've actually cut this one a little short, because I had to narrow that one down a little bit, because when the fuel tank fits in here, it was interfering with it. So we just want to, again, make the image of it. And so you've got your traction cables visible here. And then of all of this, when we put our shell back on, you can see a lot of that gets hidden by the air tanks. But we've got enough of the traction cables coming out. Now, when we're doing this, we want to make sure that we're not going to interfere with our trucks. And so you can see that I've got these cut flush here so that our truck has plenty of room to pivot around to make sure that everything works the way it is. And so now the next thing I'm going to do is, after we took this weight off of here up at the front, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to come in here where these X's are, and I'm going to drill in the holes so that way I can run the wires for my truck lights or ground lights. And after that, the frame, I think, is pretty much ready to go, so we can start reassembling this, put our motor in place and the fuel tank once we get that finished up. So, but that's looking really good. You can kind of see all this under here. Gives that extra little element of detail on the frame that was kind of missing before. And then we have our piping coming in here from our air tanks to the air filters, and over here just up into the shell. But I'm going to do this off camera because this is kind of running a little bit long. I'm almost at 40 minutes and I don't even put all the details on it yet. But we're going to drill our holes right here. I'm going to go take this out to the drill press where I've got a little bit bigger, more powerful drill. You can get these drills like this in a set for your hardware. This particular one is a 3/32, but obviously you don't want the hole that big. So usually I'll do like a 16th or something like that, something fairly small, and just drill holes through there, and that's where we're going to run our wires. So with our cab gone, this cab interior just fits right in place. And the biggest thing you want to make sure is that the front of this allows the cab wall to come down. So you'll push it to the back, and then right here is the channel where the cab comes down and on. So this is perfect, and it's got a full detail. It's got your cabinets and everything, and your control stand and seats and everything. So we can paint this the jade green, the New York Central jade green as the interior, and then you just glue it in place. Now, if you had a model that had nose lights, for example, there were lights up here, well, you can run them through on the floor, drill a small hole in the back, and then run the wires through there, and then up the back, and then to the decoder. But in this particular case, we have our nose lights, our class lights. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to run them through the floor here. But these are designed for the Athearn model, so you'll see there's actually a small little bump there to make sure that when we put it on the chassis here, that it doesn't interfere with the gear tower. And what is going on? Uh-oh. Well, apparently I need to cut this a little bit. This one, I haven't done this one, or something's different about that. But that weight, you're not going to miss that. So you can cut this off flush. You can use a hacksaw or a grinding wheel, or if you have a milling machine, that would be better. Or you can just take this off completely, because that would be a great way to add a current keeper, because then you can put our current keeper 2 right there. But there's just 2 screws that hold this weight in place, just like that. And then this comes off, just like that. So now trying to remember. I hadn't done this one in a while. So when I put that on, now it fits perfectly. You can see the cab interior. But this is the other one that I had done before. So you can see I've got the wipers on here. We've got all our lift rings along the top of the long hood. If you look carefully, you can see I've got the where you at? There you are. You can see I've got our traction cables under there. The lift rings along the top of the hood. We've got our wiper blades. And you see I've got our number boards redecaled and everything, and I'll show you that in the next one. We've got our lenses in here, and there's actually a cab interior, and you can see the crew figures inside there. And then on the truck, you can see that there's the wire that we painted. And then in this particular case, I just glued little LEDs underneath for the ground truck lights. So yeah, there's a little bit of that type of stuff that you can do. But anyway, you can kind of see this is more of one of the finished models that you can see now that we've added just a little bit of detail. Here's the cab or the fuel tank details and stuff like that added. So you can see some of these extra pipings. The Missouri Pacific has the 4 fuel fillers on there. So we've got the pipe fit or the air tank fit in this particular place. And like I said, we've got our brake cylinder piping. So you can do a lot of this. Now, the last thing I was going to show you on this particular one is in the fuel tank. When this goes onto the frame, you'll notice that the frame is actually pretty narrow, but the fuel tank is wide. And so when this goes in, there's a lot of space that's hollow here in the corners. And so all this is open. So what you can do is, if you can find it, is you can get some of the A-line moldable lead and just kind of tack it in there and put it in there to give it a little bit extra weight, and it gives it a lower center of gravity as well to help enhance the tractive effort. Or you can do another couple of options. You can do lead shot, like say from the hardware or from the sporting goods store that you would normally go out and try to chase animals with. But in this case, you can repurpose it there and just kind of fill that in with the glue to fill it in. But you want to make sure that when you do, you can still fit right there, because if you can't, then it kind of defeats the point. So test it, fill the sides up. The other thing is there's a low temp melting metal out there called Cerobend, which you can buy in like these little blocks, but it melts at about 145 degrees or something. But you can lay this on its side and just melt them in there, and it's low enough temperature that it doesn't mess with the plastic. So then you can use that to fill this up also. So you've got options, but point is that you have this open hollow place right here that allows you to fill it up with weight. Okay, so last thing is our drop steps, and as you can see on Athern's model here, they've got this little cutaway here where it looks like they can add a drop step. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these and glue them into place, and then again we're going to touch them up with the blue paint. So hopefully that comes out really well and you can see that, but the drop steps have 2 parts. There's one part here that would fit in that, and then the drop step glues to it, and then you can glue it in the up or the down position. There may be even some available anymore that I'm not aware of that are positionable ones. I know Atlas, for example, makes a bunch of positionable ones on their models, but I don't know if they sell them I don't know if they sell them separately or if you can buy them separately. So okay, so now I've got my traction cables on. I've got the holes drilled for my ground lights, truck lights. And then the only other thing I did was I cut this off. This was the screw bosses for the weight, and I went ahead and cut that off since I had this in the vise out in the garage, just as a way to make sure I had a little bit more room there to put a current keeper over the right behind the cab. So the other thing I did was I went ahead and glued on the front and rear drop steps, and I went ahead and ran the pipes underneath here for the air tanks, and then I glued the cab interior in, and I cut a little notch here at the top which will be virtually invisible, but it's there so that when I run the wires from the lights on the cab, you'll see them going through, and then that way they can go to the decoder that'll be inside. So with the details all in place here, now it's just time to touch up the paint. And as I mentioned, I have this True Color MP Jinx Blue, which is a very close match, and just get a fine tip brush. And there may be some color difference, but we're going to weather it. And so you'll never really see the color differences. And so when we come in here, we're just going to just kind of touch up the paint a little bit. You could airbrush this as well on the chassis down here. Ultimately, it doesn't make a big deal. But we're just going to paint these cables. And we're going to paint all the details on the model that we've added, because we want them to match. Now, the biggest question that's going to come up here at this point is it an exact match? And the reality is, probably not. Because a lot of times when these manufacturers make their models overseas, their manufacturing factory over there has a color chart. And the R&D development for, in this case, we'll say Athearn or whoever it is, we ran into this a lot with our own Blackstone stuff. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick the closest color from their catalog and their mixtures, and then that is what's going to govern the final color on the model. And so they have their color, and this book is actually a fairly thick book, at least the manufacturer that we dealt with our Blackstone stuff, with all different shades. And there may be pages and pages and pages of blue, and it's up to the folks at Athearn in this particular case, find out which blue matches the best to their eyes and their paint chips or photos and all this stuff. That all factors in. And the $1 million question is it the exact color? Well, maybe not. I mean, you can get some of the standard colors usually from like DuPont or a lot of the paint companies that are out there, and you can get the color codes. But is that what the factory in China or wherever the models are made, is that the same colors they're using? Probably not. But I mention all that because ultimately it doesn't matter. And it's wet right now, so it may look a little different because it's going to dry. But we're basically going to do the same thing here. We're going to touch up these lift rings. And the hardest part about the lift rings is we want them to be hollow. We want the lift rings to show that they're open. And so with that, I lost a lift ring somewhere. My front lift ring fell out. Well, I'll have to add it back here in a minute. But this one here must have fallen out, so I must not have put enough glue on it, which can happen. Not necessarily a big deal. And honestly, there's a greater than 0 chance it's sitting here on the table, on my workbench somewhere. I don't see it, but it may turn up. Either way, I got more. But when we paint these up like this, we're just putting the coat of paint on them. And then when we come back, we can always put the tip of a pin through the hole to make sure that the hole is open. Because if you don't have the open hole, then what's the point of putting the lift ring out? I gotta get the other side on a few of these here. But this doesn't take very long to do. As you can see, remember, we're just touching it up. And then going back to the color match. Well, why doesn't it matter? Well, once we weather it, we're not going to be able to really see any differences anyway. So you can see here in the 3039 that I did, we've got the blue on these lift rings, but once we come back over and paint the weathering on it, you can't tell that that's not the exact match. So it just gives us that ability to kind of come in here and get it close. But on these piping, you want to try to get as much on both sides of the pipe as you can, because if any of that's visible, then it very well could be detriment, or not distracting, I guess is the word I was looking for, because if it doesn't look like it blends in. There we go. So you can kind of just see it doesn't take much to, it doesn't take much to paint these. And then once they're dry, then that's basically would be the final assembly. Then you can go back and take a quick peek at it, find out, okay, does this look like it's finished? Is this what I want it to look like? And yes, I'm using a brush, so ultimately it won't matter too much whether the just use light coat, light touch. And just, you can always add more paint, but it's harder to take it off. So we're just trying to give it a coat of paint here so that it looks like it belongs. And it was built on there from the factory. So, and even if there's a little bit of untouched, unpainted part, so what? That's where the paint was wearing off during use. Weathering, right? Okay. And then I just got a little bit more. Got this front step. And then we got the two trucks that are here with the pipe, the air brake pipe that we added to those. Now the front ones, the front truck side frames actually had some unique wheel brake arrangements. The front one, the front fireman's side had a high and a low brake cylinder, and then the engineer's side were all low, which I thought was interesting. And doing some research, that's how it was on the prototype, but all the pictures that Athearn had gathered on that particular model. This is the 3041. So now you can see those details, even with just a little bit of paint, kind of blend in now. And while they're not gold or plated or brass or whatever, they don't really stand out, but they also, once you put it all together, they will look exactly right. So let's touch the paint up on this guy here. Now on this particular one, I did not yet add the sanding lines. Honestly, in an effort to get this video done, that's something I can always come back and do later. But as you can see, this isn't all that difficult. Doesn't take a whole lot of effort, and our efforts are going to be well worth it, because now when our model looks much better, even with just a little bit of detail added, just a little bit of paint touch up, and then we come back and weather this, it's going to be even better. And then we're just going to touch up the top of this. Again, most of this probably isn't being seen from the front or the outside or the side of the model, but inevitably it'll somehow show through. So just a little bit of effort. Let's make sure this one's done. There you go. So that's done. And see, this is what I was talking about. So this is the fireman's side, and you can see there's a high brake cylinder and then the low brake cylinder here. And then on the engineer's side, you got two low brake cylinders. So this is one of the unique things, and it's good for Athearn for paying attention to that level of detail for these particular models, because then that way we have that level of detail without having to go in and replace a whole bunch of parts, because we saw a picture of the model, but then suddenly we realize that they didn't do it, or now we can't unsee that particular detail, or whatever the case is. So the good news is this is almost done. So we're just going to touch up the back here. And I'm just using the cap, whatever came in from the shaking. It's starting to, looks like it's starting to dry a little bit, but so we can get out of some more out of the bottle itself if we need. But usually the True Color paint doesn't take long, and it cleans up with just some regular acetone. So it's one of my favorite go-to paints when I'm doing this type of work. So there we go. And we can let it dry, and then we can always come back in and touch it up again if we need to. Because like I said, obviously I lost a lift ring up there, so I'll touch that up. But you can see the detail is on here, but now it kind of blends in, but yet it adds that extra element of this looks like a finished model now. And then especially once you take the underside, and now you've got your traction cables, you've got the pipes for the air tank, and all this stuff underneath of here, and then you have your lift rings and such like that. Like I said, doesn't take much effort to make the model look that much better with just a little bit of detail parts from our friends at Details West and other companies. Now the other thing I did was, I had mentioned this earlier, is inside the fuel tank here you can see the lead shot, and I just used some white glue, a thin layer, and put some lead shot in there to give it some extra weight, because we lost a weight here and a weight here. Now we can add this back, and this just fits right up in there. And there's actually even more room for a little bit more weight if I wanted to, because here in this back section, you can kind of see that there's some open space here. So I could put a little bit more, but I think I'm just going to leave it at that. But it's just enough to add a little bit, a little bit extra gravity or weight to it for traction, and the fuel tank fits right in there. Like I said, you just want to make sure that the shot or whatever you put in here on the side doesn't extend past this edge of the fuel tank, or you can interfere with mounting it on here. So now we're going to let that dry, and the next step, this will be the end of this particular section. So you've got some detail parts added. We've talked about the cab. We added the wiper blades. We've added the traction cables. We've added the fuel tank detail here, and we've added some detail to the body just to help stand apart. So that's going to be the end of this particular segment. Well, guys, that's the end of this particular section. This is part 2 of Rehab My Loco, and just showing you some basic details that you can add to your models pretty easily to just help take them from a basic model to a little bit closer to a standout, top-of-the-line, fully detailed model like you would buy in the stores from some of the companies that are out there. So this gives you the ability to go back and do some of the work on some of your other models that, as the companies have progressed, they've added more and more detail, and maybe some of them may not have the level of detail that some of the modern stuff does, but as you can see, with a little bit of effort, you can get an easy addition of some detail. So that's everything this particular week. If you like this kind of content, please comment, let us know below. Be sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, and make sure to give us a thumbs up. And if you have any further questions, you want to dive into this deeper, give us an email at support@soundtraxx.com. And then for those of you who've noticed, I've been wearing our special brand new 35th anniversary t-shirts. These are available on our website right now, so be sure to get over there and get yours before they sell out. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time when I get back to part 3, which will be prepping and installing lights on our models so that we can light this thing up and show you how I do that on my models. So we'll see you next time. Take care.